Buenos dias, good morning. I didn't even say anything and you're laughing already.
This is amazing. I love this whole vibe. Like,
you do?
I need to do that every morning. I just like come out of my coffee.
To your husband, good morning.
Not in my Zoom meetings. That's what I
Stop it.
Good morning.
Can you please do that for
I
me?
will, and I'll record it. And
Please
I'll send
do.
it. Okay. All right, I will.
That is so thoughtful. No, seriously, hello everybody. This is Lisette.
Hello.
Welcome to another Yaki Coffee Chats, and today we're chatting with Lisette. And we're going to be talking about something that I think a lot of people, it's pretty universal, deal with, which is boundaries. And you are currently working through some of that. So we're right, and you're giving us permission to kind of get into your head a little bit about how you're processing all that. But before we get into that, I always like to ask a very existential question. Who is Lisette?
Oh my
Why are you here?
I mean, I drove myself here.
Okay, that's good. What else?
All right, so I usually introduce myself by saying I'm a proud first-gen Chicana from Santana, and now a proud wife and a mom of a cute little baby boy that goes to networking events with me. So I honestly, my identity definitely has changed.
Yeah, Jordan is he is your...
He's like my number one fan and I'm his number one fan. So I feel like we've definitely gone through a lot of things together and it's, I'm just so excited. I'm in a very exciting stage watching him grow. And I mean, obviously he's still little, but I'm excited to just live this next phase of his life with him. So.
That is beautiful. And I'm always happy to see moms that are just excited to grow with their kids and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I was just talking to my husband about that of like, it's not necessarily like reliving your life with them or like projecting that on them, but it's more like watching them like step into their own shoes kind of thing and then seeing their likes, their dislikes, like being able to just experience like the things maybe you did or didn't experience growing up, but obviously around what they want to do.
Yeah, and it's funny you say this because, I mean, not to like totally jump into the boundaries, but I feel like as you were saying that, I was like, that reminds me of how that doesn't always happen. Like you were literally like stepping into motherhood and approaching it. In my opinion, it sounds like you're really excited to learn and understand who he is as an individual versus like putting things on them. And I think that's where boundaries sometimes can get tricky because there's expectations and so you're already off the bat like you're like,
I think this is things that like
did you notice that you're doing that?
I didn't until you said it now.
I was like,
it's things that I'm trying to just like be mindful of every day. Of course they're not going to be perfect and of course these are things that as human beings that are flawed, I'm going to always have some sort of like projection of my own things growing up, but it's things that I'm trying to be mindful of like during even now and trying to make sure that I do things that to help myself to be able to be kind of that best version for him. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into it, shall we? So I as I do this with all my guests, we talk and sometimes I propose a topic, but I feel like you were like, let's talk about boundaries. Why is this important to you? And can you define boundaries first and then kind of talk about why you chose this topic?
Yes. So I was actually thinking about that on my drive over here.
Oh my God.
Because obviously there's like technical definitions to boundaries, but one of the coolest things that one of my closest friends shared with me when I was having a really rough time these past 2 years, early on, she told me that she read somewhere that they define boundaries as a way to love oneself and the best way to love others. And that really got to me, and not even the part of loving myself, because conceptually as a social worker, I know that how self-care is important. Obviously I wasn't practicing it, but it was more like the part where she's like, that's the best way you can love others. And because growing up, like I think there's so many, and we can unpack this a little bit, but I think there were so many ways in which I was conditioned to love others first. Then that clicked with me. Then I was like, I need to have more boundaries because then I can be better for others too.
Ooh, I'm like, yes. and that part about that part about you were conditioned to care about others is like, do you feel that it is a sort of a generational thing of like, and what is it? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Like, what is it about like being like, no, them first and then you? Like, what do you think it is?
Right. And I think it definitely looks different for everybody, right? Yeah. Like, and I think our feelings come from different places.
Yeah.
I think culturally speaking, it's very typical for women, especially women that are oldest in their families, to have either written or unwritten expectations or set or unset expectations of the way you should behave, the way you should be doing things, and the things that you're responsible for. For instance, like just even a clear example the other day, I was sharing with my friend how like, I think even though my parents didn't vocalize this to me, I always felt like every step that I took was an example to my sister. And so even though they initially never said anything, later on it was brought up to my attention of then when my sister did something that was like, no, not okay, it's like, oh, she learned that from you. And so I was like, okay, I was right?
Okay, that tracks.
That's not okay. It's not okay either.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
And not giving you that individualized like experience of like your yeah.
And also another big one is like growing up with your parents, like because I mean, at least my parents were so young when they had me. I was like, I can't even imagine. I'm a parent now and I'm 30 and I feel like I'm a teen mom and I really am not. But like my mom was like 23, 24.
Oh, very young.
I'm like, she was growing up in front of my eyes. And my dad was too.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah. Oh, and so now obviously in a non-judgmental way, and I can see in a more mature way, these boundaries were being explored with me as well. And I think I wasn't allowed to explore that until I got older.
That's so fascinating because I'm not 23 and like I'm not a mom yet, but I do think about that. I go like, it's a lot of responsibility, and you in your 20s, you're still growing, you're still trying to figure out how to love yourself or how to figure out yourself, and so then to bring on a child, like it's going to have an effect on your children, like
and they had just gotten married too, and so it was just like they're exploring their own dynamic as a married couple, exploring a new country, exploring being a new mom, a new dad to this little girl, and working 3 jobs each. So it's like,
oh my gosh,
of course I'm grateful for everything they did, but for sure I can understand where my boundary challenges came from. For sure.
So talk to me about growing up in that environment. Were you, looking back now, I guess, because in hindsight, you know, as you're kind of working through these boundaries, like what comes to mind as like seeing your parents growing in front of you at that time? Were you frustrated with them? Were you like, or were you the type of person that was like, no, like I'm the oldest, I have to do this, like were you, I don't know, were you proud of it? Like how was your, and how have you changed? Like how has that changed now?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question.
Is that like a loaded question?
Sorry,
no,
it's not loaded. It's a big question.
Okay.
It's a good, an important question.
Yeah. And I didn't even know you were a social worker, by the way, so now I have more questions. So if I go on, I'm like, yes,
I'm a trained social worker.
Ooh, I love it.
Non-clinical by choice.
Okay.
I was like being a chillona every day. I'm like, I'm not trying to do this every day. Anyway, and I think my social worker came from when I was a child. I was actually recently exploring this with my therapist. So it's a very fresh topic.
Okay.
For sure, I can definitely attribute those boundaries to growing up with my young parents, right? And I was a single child for 11 years, so that's another fun fact.
Yeah. That is a fun fact.
So I was growing up in a house of adults. And I grew up in a house with like 20 people plus, like my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, like everybody that came from Mexico. That was a transitional house. So I lived in a small garage with my mom and dad for a couple years. And that's why they worked 3 jobs.
Wow.
And so then eventually we moved into a house that my parents bought. And so in that time, it was very stressful. And so I think For me, it was very normal to like not really have boundaries with my parents. Like we shared a room for a really long time because my parents rented out the other rooms to be able to afford the mortgage. In terms of like interpersonal dynamics, the one thing I could think about at the top of my head is my mom having me as her best friend and her only listener. And I can definitely like attribute everything that I do because of that dynamic. And I definitely saw my mom more than my dad because I was able to go with my mom to work because she cleaned houses and stuff. But
May I stop you right there? So I like to kind of just break down some of this stuff. So in this close relationship with your mother at that time, did you think, oh my God, this is so awesome? Or were you like, oh, like other peer, like, did you see peers have that same relationship? Like,
I didn't think it was not normal. Like for me, it was just that's the way it is. Yeah. And obviously I didn't think it was not normal until I was older and I realized why I'm a perfectionist and why I'm always trying to mediate everything and why I'm trying to like just do everything to make sure everyone's happy with me. And so that I attributed to making sure my mom was always okay because she suffered a lot in those dynamics and she would tell me everything, including the things I probably shouldn't have known and things that obviously in her learnings I'm sure she like realized she probably shouldn't have told me, but it was more like, again, her marriage dynamic, her also like dynamic in terms of like finding herself in this new country. And so for me, definitely impacted and now shows up as an adult in forms of which I get anxiety of like when something's not done correctly or when like for myself, like when I don't do things as I feel like they should, or when being like hyper vigilant, making sure that and maybe even in having conversation, everyone's taken care of, in hosting people, everyone's taken care of, even in the career I chose.
Social work, that's
making sure like I'm helping people. And so it's like my therapist said, it just kind of left me at this huge question mark of where does this leave me? Like where is Lisette in all of this?
Where did you find what happened that changed for you where you're like, this is a question I need to answer? Like was there something?
Yes, trauma.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So briefly, because I can definitely ramble and stop me.
No, please do. This is what coffee chats are for.
2 years ago, I lost my first baby, and having gone through that loss, and then I was able to get pregnant again, and my baby went through the NICU for 3 months, and so. That definitely, that whole journey definitely made me, like forced me to explore what is going on within me because I was breaking it into hives. I was like physically manifesting like all of my traumas.
It was like your body, you were like,
my body just like gave me a big slap on the face and was like, what are you doing?
Wow.
And so I had to be forced to deal with my trauma.
Okay, may I reframe, as my therapist likes to say, reframe. Yes. But I feel like if it was, maybe it's not necessarily forced, but maybe reframe and say like, I think your body is taking care of you. I think your body is saying, hey, you know what, like, let's see what's going on here. Yeah.
Like this whole time you've been trying to find a therapist and you haven't done anything about it. You should probably do it now. But I was, early in my social work career, I was like, I need to be proactive and take care of myself because.
So let's talk about that for a second. Because a few minutes ago you were like, I was not doing that for myself. Yeah. What do you think that is then? It's you want to help people, right, in this state. But you're aware that you're not doing it for yourself. Do you think looking back, maybe you were like avoiding? Like you were like,
avoiding because vulnerability is hard.
It is.
I think I was okay with it conceptually of being like I need to take care of myself because I can't take care of others if I can't take care of myself theoretically. Asterisks all over
What is it, the mask you gotta put on yourself before you?
But I was more like conceptually on board with it.
What does that mean though? Like I know what you're saying, but sorry, I want to get like deeper. I want to be like, so you're saying conceptually, but like, what really was it that you're like, I'm just going to understand it as a concept, but I'm not going to actually use it for myself?
Because like, that would make me a good social worker. career. Not like internal. Like I want to actually get deep into my own stuff.
And it's funny how when you work on that stuff, it actually ends up making you a better.
Yes.
But we don't like.
Yeah. But it just has to hit you.
Yeah, it has to hit you.
It has to hit you a different way. And at least for me, right? Like everybody has different ways. And some people are more flexible or malleable to and receptive to that help.
Yeah.
But again, that's another thing. Like
different circumstances, context.
Yeah. And not all of us are very good at getting help.
Yeah.
And so I think conceptually, yes, I'm like, yes, this is going to make me a great social worker. But then I was like, not really actively looking for anything. Okay. But obviously when everything hit, I'm like, no, I have to do this. Like I cannot even function without really trying to figure myself out. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. And so You've started the work. How are you feeling so far with the work that you've put in?
It's relieving. I felt like a sigh.
I felt it too. I was like, oh.
I think to put it in a very concise way, it brings back little pieces back of myself. I felt like I was losing bits and parts of myself with the years, and especially these past 2 traumatic years. And I regained some kind of sense of who I am and what I like to do and how I am too. Like, I'm like, no, I'm usually a more direct person. And like, I can make these boundaries. Like, I can make those verbal boundaries happen. Like, I can do this. I'm like, why haven't I been doing it?
Why haven't I been doing it?
Yeah. Like, what's really stopping me from, like, letting people know what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not comfortable with?
That's
like,
huge.
Why don't I accept that support from my husband, like, from my parents? Like, why do I think I can do it all by myself? Like, and then maybe I can, but why should I be so alone? Yeah.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's taking it's taking a bit.
I mean, it's a process, but that's cool that you're like, because it's funny because from as an outsider, as you're saying these things, I'm like, all these things that you're questioning, I'm like, oh, like when you question it, like all these beautiful things can happen if you allow it.
So that's the part.
That's the part. That part. So that's what the Gen Z are saying, like that part.
That part.
So this idea of allowing yourself XYZ. And I'm going to bring this example just to see if you relate to it or what your thoughts are. But and we talked about this when we were talking about this topic. But this idea of allowing yourself to be who you are, allowing yourself to prioritize yourself. Dare I say prioritize yourself? Dare I say that? So an example that has been a big part of my life is like I was always very my coming out process was always about like making sure my family was okay. Like that was very important to me, like making sure they were comfortable, because to me it's like, this is my family. I don't want them to see me differently. I don't want it to, impact our situation. When in reality, it's like, I should have made sure that I was okay with it. And like they're gonna, if they really love me, they have to, they'll come. But that dichotomy, like that never crossed my mind. Like I didn't think that was an option. It was like always like, it's like, no, and especially like being Latinos, like we don't really have a lot of family here. So growing up, it was us, it's the 6 of us, And so for me, it was like, wait, so this family, this core family that we have, like I say this and now like I'm going to feel like the odd man out, odd gay woman out,
and it's
whatever.
The family that I have.
And it's the family that I have. And I know it loves me, they love me. But so anyways, this ended up, fast forward to, I'm getting ready to, propose to Anna, and I'm like, oh my God, they still are, there's still some, things that have not been unresolved quirks that have not been resolved in that dynamic and understanding like us as a couple.
Yeah.
And, fortunately it took my therapist to like really work through like allowing myself to be who I am. Because even when I was a kid, like, these natural thoughts, like I was like, oh, I wouldn't allow myself to have them because I thought there was something wrong with me, right? So this is like compounded, and now it's like with my family. And so anyways, long story short, I told my family back to boundaries, I was like, okay, well, I've been putting these boundaries to accommodate them, never to serve me, as I thought they would. So I switched it, but it took figuring out what all this was, that I put the boundaries on them, and I said, hey, like, you're on your timeline, and I have to accept that, and I have to respect that, but you also have to respect mine. And that was like the hardest thing I could have ever done, because I never thought I would ever be able to do that. But in doing that, they were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. They're like, wait. It's like I took back the power, and they were like, wait, you know, no, we want to be in your life, and we support this. So yes, like whatever you need. And I'm like, wait, what the heck? I've been like, but it took, like, honestly, it took them like thinking that they could lose me to like, which it doesn't, I don't want it to come down to that, right? I'm not advocating that, but I just never realized that I have a say, you know, my voice matters. And anyways, I don't know what you think about this story, or if it resonates with you, or
no, for sure. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's very powerful, and I'm glad you were able to do that, because some of us have to get pushed to the other side to really like be able to step up and do that, and just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna go back into my low hole and crawl out whenever my family tells me that I'm ready. But it like, when is that gonna happen, right? And so, and I think it's even easier than also in your situation, and obviously it's different, right? It's sometimes, for me, I find it easier to put a boundary on somebody else than to put it on myself. And so I feel like those are the boundaries that I feel are the most challenging with me. I mean, externally, one of the things I am working on are boundaries with my in-laws.
Okay.
And I can talk very briefly about that a little. But I'm sure that's gonna happen with my parents too, now that I'm a mom. And I think it's more around being a mom, that those boundaries, and the cultural context behind that. But for me, it's more like, when am I gonna step up and really put boundaries for myself at work, and also my personal life, to make sure that I'm physically and mentally okay. Not take on so much like I'm used to, and be able to give myself time to disconnect. And that's the part that's, I think, the hardest for me.
The hardest. Okay. It's funny you say that, because I think what comes to mind when I hear that is like, and it's work. It's all work. Like, it's all work. But I will say this, like, it's really, I feel, for me, and you know, as I think about motherhood too, I'm like, oh, and it's good I'm hearing this, because I'm like, because I've just been trying to put boundaries on myself for work and stuff, and I don't even have kids yet, right? So
it's a good practice.
But it's a good practice. So what I'm learning is that, like, you know, I come first, you know, I cannot get, and I was always giving to my employer and all this stuff, but then I was left with nothing, right? So it's like, I'm going backwards now, and I'm like, okay, I got to make sure that I'm okay, you know, because I don't know, I guess I'm valuing things different, and I'm at a different place in my life. So for you, like, on any given day, you know, throughout your day, like, how do you take time for yourself, or like nurture that part of you to make sure that, like, you're working on prioritizing yourself? What are there things that you find yourself doing, or find yourself not doing anymore?
That's a good question. I had to explore that a little bit in the beginning, because to me, even hearing that is like just a huge task of like, how do I create an event? Or like, right, like I'm thinking like Google Calendar in my head. I'm like, how do I like create an event where I have time for myself? Like, that's a huge task to ask from a mom, as a new employee as well, because I'm new to my job. And then just somebody that is new at like receiving this help from like my therapist. Like, I'm like trying to explore that. Like, I've never really done stuff like this for myself. And so I found it very daunting to think about these things as like events. But that's like the first thing that I went to. Like, I'm like, I have to block off time for myself. Like, go get my nails done, like go make an appointment to get my hair done. Like, that's so daunting. Like, to me,
it's a lot. It's a lot.
But then I had to step like 1,000 steps, like, before, and I'm like, you know what? I can start by literally just saying no to stuff.
Ooh.
And that's what I've been doing. It's more like, what? These are too many meetings today. I'm going to cancel one or two. Like, seriously, that's what I've been doing. And I've noticed that that's helped me a lot. No pasa nada.
No pasa nada.
Because some meetings could be emails. A lot of meetings can be emails.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Here's the thing. Here's what I've realized is that, like, how do I say this? Okay, let's see if I can say this.
Tell me.
What I'm realizing is that most people out there, like, we all are trying to do our healing and trying to understand what's going on. But, like, you're interacting probably or, like, engaging with folks who probably haven't done, right, may not have done certain work. And so they're like, oh, meeting, or this and that. But if you take it's like that power that I was telling you about my family. It's like when you take back the power, it's like no pasa nada, like, in owning your space, and people, like, end up, like, respecting it. And in some ways, like, you might end up, like, impacting others in a really beautiful way for them to be like, oh yeah, I guess we don't, like,
we don't have to do that
or whatever. But I that's what I'm realizing is, like, I mean, 10 years ago, I probably would have been like, wouldn't have any concept of really understanding that. But, like, I mean, that's the one thing I am happy about getting older, is that, like, I really do, my perspective is changing, and I'm like, my thing is, like, I'm just trying to find some inner peace, you know, like, just some inner peace, like, it's all good, like,
lay down with my puppy and do, like, stuff that I like.
And no pasa nada. Like, you work as hard as you can, and work as hard as people let you, and then
and the things get done. The thing is, like, you get things done. It's more about, like, there's some things that you just don't need to do all the time. And you're right about also even people feeling grateful for, like, meeting cancellations. Like, I've been having so many people be receptive to, like, thank God I've had such a, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me that before? Like, why does it take me being like, you know what, this doesn't need to happen? It's like, most of us don't vocalize our needs.
And I think it all ladders back to, I always come down to this, like, in all my coffee chats, it just always comes down to you. Yeah. It always comes down to, like, whatever you're working through or haven't worked through, it, like, is a domino effect. And, like, most people, like I'm saying, like, if they haven't done that work, they're just gonna, like, go as they've been told and this and that, but it takes
automatic.
But I think it's I'm trying to say, like, I'm proud of you, and it's like, I think it's empowering that you're doing this, because you will, you know, you're gonna affect, you know, make an impact on yourself, but I think of the people around you. And not to sound cheesy, but, like, it actually does end up accommodating what you, I think, in your heart, which is, like, I think, yes, as much as you've experienced all this, I think you have a good heart and you want what's best for people. I think that's true. So I think by you doing this, you're also going to end up, you know, helping yourself, but helping others. And so in the end, you'll get what you wanted.
I mean, you know? Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was mentioning in the beginning too, right? Like, you love yourself, but you also love others in the process. Because then, like you said, like, you're impacting others, but also people are watching and they're learning. Obviously, it's not a perfect journey in any way, shape, or form. No, it's not perfect.
Nothing's perfect.
Nothing is. And that was, like, my hesitancy when we were trying to do this episode, because I was like, what? I'm not an expert at boundaries. Like, why do you want me to talk about boundaries? But this is great. I mean, if anything, I think this is the most realist thing to talk about is trying to understand them and work and understand how you can create ones that are going to, at the end, help you love yourself, help you be the person you want to be, so that then you end up being a better person in society, and then then everyone's like, you know, it's a domino effect, but it all starts with you. I hate saying that, it's so cheesy, but it really does. It's like, it all starts with you. Yeah. And for me, I think one of the biggest reflections I actually had yesterday after my therapy appointment was, this is a way in which I even can love my son better. Because I am like, I want him to be free, and I want him to feel like he has choice. And I want him to feel like he's liberated in that process of, like, not having certain expectations, or, like, not feeling like he's supposed to be a certain way or talk a certain way or interact a certain way. Like, he needs to be who he is. Obviously, as with developmental stages, there comes different learnings, obviously, but it's like him leaving those phases freely.
And you know what you're doing is you're creating a really safe, healthy space for him to figure out who he is and explore who he is. Because, I mean, not to, like, you know, I I'm always happy to hear this with parents because, you know, growing up gay, like when, you know, it's funny when, even as I was telling you the story about my family, I'm like, it's interesting, isn't it? Because all they could have done was like, and like, oh, like, that's who you are, Jackie? Awesome. Like, it didn't have to be a thing, you know, it didn't have to lead to whatever it did, but it's like, it's about like parents just like having that space. But I think in order to create that space, they themselves as individuals have to be like, I don't know, there has to be a level of like love and healing that one has to do to be able to facilitate that. Because it's like, how can you ask someone to do that when they're dealing with stuff too, you know? Because they're humans too, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then maybe that's what it took for your parents.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Like maybe it's like normal. It's like, whoa, what happened here to this outlier? Like here, but it's always been there. It's just more like now they are like challenged to explore what that looks like, and obviously they're gonna love you unconditionally, and obviously people react very different ways. But I'm glad that even if it was eventually that you had like a positive reaction. Yeah, and I would say that even for like my family, my parents and my sisters too, and my brother, because now they get to like, they're parents now, you know, and so then now they can, you know. It's so funny, I went to see my cousins and they have like teenage kids, like 13, 14 and twins or whatever, and they were just like, one of their friends was like, yeah, my ex-boyfriend, like he looks gay. I'm like, oh, what does gay look like? Yeah. I'm like, because I'm gay. Yeah. And she's like, oh, the friend did, right? And then my cousin's little kid was like, yeah, like she's gay. Yeah. And he's 12 years old and I'm just like, and I'm all, yeah, I am gay, and you know, and it was just like, I don't know, just like it was euphoric because it was just like, oh, I don't have to hide even with young people, and they get to see someone who's just like who's like, oh, they're just gay, like it's like not this like, oh, you're modeling,
so that to me was like, oh, like, oh, wow, okay,
that's great because I mean, like what you said, it really made me think of like my middle school experience. Of like everyone all of a sudden having like a gaydar, and I was like, what's a gaydar? Like, why don't I have that? Like, I can't tell if people are gay or not. Like, I thought it was this exclusive thing.
It's okay.
Yeah, I felt like I was in outs of something. And I'm like
what's going on?
People have access to this gaydar, and I just don't know where to get it. Like, and so it's just funny that you say that. But it's also beautiful to see that people are a lot more open to talking about their experiences, but also seeing you live your life to whatever mechanism you live it to, and they're seeing that, and it's obtaining like this normalcy in like people's different experiences in life. And I think that's the best thing you can do.
Oh, thanks.
Just living your life.
Thank you so much for that.
That's awesome.
Okay, so you were talking about social work. So can we talk about that for a minute? Okay, cool.
I mean, no, not go there.
I don't know if people have noticed, but she has a little concha here.
This is what got me through social work school, eating bread and drinking coffee, and that's not a lie. It's real.
It's real.
It's real.
Okay, so I imagine, like you said, you entered in that work because you wanted to help other people.
Yes.
Were there moments where you're helping these people and you're like, oh, but because I think people don't underestimate the people that work in social services, human services, like nonprofits, like it's heavy work. Like you're helping other people, but you're also human and you have your own like set of, you know, stuff.
Yeah.
So was that a surprise to you? Like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, because, you know, you were probably just starting out and you're like, oh, I can do this. Like, were you surprised that you're like, wait, like, would you have done things differently? I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts.
What was my experience in trying to figure what that looked like for myself? Pretty much?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess. I mean, I was also 22. I was like 21, 22 when I started.
You're still a baby, but...
Oh, thank you. I'm 30.
Oh, you're a baby, baby.
So I was like a fetus at that time. I don't know.
You're a fetus that was drinking alcohol,
Yeah, no? I was an alcoholic fetus. Don't call social service.
Yeah, don't.
I was just trying to make a difference, you know, like I wanted to save the world. I wanted to just fix all these policies. I wanted to be a politician, and I wanted
still
to
can
just
be,
like,
right?
Oh, of course, and that's part 2 to my life.
Oh, part 2. Okay.
Yeah, maybe part 3 or 4, right?
Okay.
Like I can still have other parts in between.
I mean, Biden is 80 years old, so
I want to
he's the president of the United States. He's literally 80. So
I want to be Biden when I grow up, but I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
Oh my God, would you run for president? Would you?
No. I would have said yes in my alcoholic fetus stage.
Oh, but
no.
Okay.
And I can tell you more about that later.
Okay.
Part 2. No. Anyway, I don't want to be like Biden when I grow up, but that's another topic. But when I started my social work career, like that's the vibe I had. Just more like I could do anything. Like I can fix everybody. I can help everything. And no, like later you find out you can't even fix yourself. But
can we take a moment to just? That's a lot you just said, okay? Because that's really like. There's some sadness in that. Can we just take a minute to understand that? Because I feel like. But there's no way around it. I'm not saying, I mean, that's life and that's humanity, but there is something to say of like, when you're young and you're like, oh, I'm going to help people, I'm going to do this. And then you realize like there's a lot of stuff that gets in the way of doing that. And then you feel like, am I doing enough? And like, and then like you said, then there's that and then helping yourself. Like, can we just take a minute to sit in that? Because it's like, what the hell?
It's like, what the hell? How do you call it when you're driving and you have to kind of just like adjust real quick?
Like Tokyo Drift or what?
Yeah, it's just kind of like you're like this and then you're like,
oh, okay.
You're like, oh shit,
oh yeah, that's the worst.
Like that's how it felt. Like it felt like someone jerked me into place, especially because like my second year, like my year and a half, or the year into the master's program, it was the 2016 elections. So that'll do it. And so there's just so much interesting things to say about those couple of years. But I think for me, it shook me to the core. I was practicing in my clinical internship, my first year into my master's program. And then that was actually into the 2016 election. And I was working with the migrant community here in like Santana, Westminster area. And so like, that really, I could say, really impacted and popped my bubble. I think in a good and also obviously in a really sad way of like just seeing like, man, like there's so much going on in the world and I can only do what I can do right here in front of me. Yeah. And that's if, right? Like that's if. And so as much as I can have with my experience with this person in front of me, I had a situation that really impacted me in my first year as a clinician. Because even if you're a macro social worker or a clinician, a route, and I can explain that a little bit afterwards, but you all have to do first year clinical training to understand how to do intervention or create interventions that are adequate for. I had a client who became like so attached to me and her life had been very, very, very difficult. And I kept thinking about her all the time. And I was just developing this weird dynamic where I was like, I need to just do so much more with her. Like there's so much more that we need to explore. And I had so little time and it came to a point where I was like, you know what? Like her whole life is not for me to fix. Physically be there in a really deep point in her life when I was already working with her because I don't live with her, right? And so I had to unattach myself to kind of that and realize that I can only do my best as a 22, 23-year-old, learning how to do interventions, learning how to work with people, not even, not having a penny in my pocket to be able to even support anything and just learning, right? Like just being a learner. And the best thing I could do for her at that time is just be a human with her at the moment that I had with her. And I think that made a difference to her.
Wow.
And it made most importantly, it made a difference with me. And like that made me think a lot, like me with her and then me in the social context I was in. And it really changed also like the way that I wanted to work with people. And
do you realize how huge that is to realize that at your embryo age of 22? you nailed it on the head. Like, I mean, I guess in my experience too, is like, you can only, like, as much as we want to try to fix people, like, unfortunately, like, we cannot be consumed by other people or other things, because, I mean, that's not healthy for any kind of dynamic. But as you were saying that, I'm like, yeah, like, I mean, I think the best advice, which is what you ended up, I think, are doing, is like, the more that you can make sure that you're okay, you're working on your mental health, that you're doing all right, then that will give you the ability and the tools to help other people as best as possible. Are you going to fix people? No. Like, only in the superhero movies, right?
Exactly.
That's
and
what they're there for.
Yeah. Maybe
the Marvel movies. But it's like,
do those people want to be helped, though? That is the question.
Yeah, that is a good question. No, I lost my train of thought. Shoot.
Sorry.
It's okay. Basically that's it. Like that. Like, I think that, you know, as much as we want to, you know, save people and solve their problems, like, life is also really complex, and I think there's just so many layers to it that it's like, everybody has their lessons and their tribulations and their journey, and I think, I don't know, I've come to this sort of acceptance of like, you help the best way that you can, you know?
Yeah.
I feel that I'm doing it in my own way that is preserving my mental health, you know, because I'm like you too, I'm just like, but then I get consumed, and then who ends up getting hurt? Myself. And so, and that's back to boundaries. Like, that's a hard thing to be like, you know what, like, as much as like, person is suffering, and as much as I feel like I can help this person, like, I need to make sure that I'm okay so that I can help and be there for not only this person but the other people in my life that need me, and including me.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Why do
you need yourself?
Why is there such guilt and like making sure that when you say like, oh, I'm there for the people that need me, but like, you need you. Why is it so hard for us to be like, I need me? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why?
Because culturally we're not taught to be selfish.
I'm like, I'm not sharing my pan dulce. Like, that's just what one child, like.
Yeah. Like, if I try to grab it, you should be taking it away from me. We're not taught that.
No.
Because everything you do, including taking care of yourself, impacts others. That's what it is. Which,
to some degree, right, it's like, well, at the same time, of course you want to be in community and you want to help people, but to what cost, right? Like, where it's like, that's I don't know.
I mean, you interlayer being a woman and kind of treading those waters and thinking about how you're taught to be well-mannered and to an extent be of service to others all the time, that there really isn't time to think about yourself. And most importantly, and I could say, and I can't speak on behalf of you, but watching my mom always be of service to others, that was like, and she was my model. So she is my model. And to me, I'm like, watching her, like, calentarle la tortilla a mi papá, servir el plato, like, doing all those things. Of course, it was like, to me, I'm like, I never want to do that. But it stayed with me, right? Like, even if it's not calentándole tortillas, it's more like, I have to make sure my husband's okay, my child's okay, my friends are okay. And so, like, that was, I think, for me, the thing I can pinpoint it most to. I'm sure there are other things, but I think the first thing that comes to my head is more that.
See, and there is beauty in that. Yeah. Like, that is beautiful, you know? Like, so. Yeah. Like, that is beautiful.
But you could do it in your own terms.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to serve the tortilla, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful.
I think it's,
and that was my problem. It was not necessarily that I didn't want to. Of course, like, that's literally my problem, like, that I want to always be of service to others. But it's more like, hey, like, it shouldn't be an expectation for me to be the one to serve you. Yeah. It's like on my terms.
I like that.
Yeah.
The expectation thing.
Yeah.
And then there's something, you know, I think genuine, sincere in that approach as well.
Right.
Because you're just like, oh yeah, you just.
But you do it for each other.
Yeah.
Then that's like, also the you know, the people that you choose to be around you, you know that you have that dynamic of like, I support you, but you also support me. And that's also, I think, a boundary. Yeah. Because then you become stricter in like the people that you surround yourself with. You are. And in a not like nitpicky way, but like, you notice, like, you select the people to have these conversations with more specifically, right? Based on like how they make you feel, and how you make them feel, right? And you just
you at 22, you came to this realization.
Yes.
What are some things that you've done in the last few years that have helped with your boundaries, have helped you? Because, prior to the last couple years that you've had, like, were there moments prior to that happening that you feel like you were on your way?
Yes.
Like, yeah?
Yes, I know exactly where your question is going. I get it. I visualized your question.
I love that you visualized it. You're just this intuition.
It's ridiculous.
Give me the concha. How I get the concha.
Okay, fine. I'll hold my cup. Okay.
I love that you're drinking it. Not everyone drinks it. Gabby drank the whole thing, and I texted her after. I was like, "You drank the whole coffee?" She's like, "Yeah, why not?" Because some people come and like I guess they start talking and they forget that it's there.
No, I remember coffee.
Yeah, you remember.
I remember coffee. Coffee and I have a thing. Like, you can't just put a coffee cup. I'm Mexican. We drink coffee since we're little. Like, you can't just give me cafe.
I love it.
So yes, I had those moments when I chose then what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So I think for me, my boundary was becoming a macro social worker. So what that means is that you support and nurture change at a social level from a more like outward lens. So from some people become some macro social workers become politicians, other policymakers, others work for like the health sector, but more in creating programs and structures. So it's more like looking at how you can support individuals and groups, but from being at the table of decision making. So that's how I explain it. Obviously, everyone's journey is very different as a macro social worker, and it's really hard, I think, for people to grasp that social workers can do that. But I think if you can understand people, you can also understand organizations.
That makes a lot of sense.
And so that's what I chose to do, because I was like, I'm not gonna be a chillona every day. I'm already like that. Yeah, si saben cómo me pongo para que me invitan. And so for me, I'm like, I need to do something where I'm gonna know that I'm making a difference, but I'm not gonna be impacted. And it sounds harsh, right? But I'm not gonna be impacted by people's like traumas every day.
Yeah.
But it was a way of protecting myself too.
Can I just take I was just so happy to put this out there because it says a lot about, because I think there's so much like, I don't know, it just makes me happy that you found a way for yourself to do what you want to do within your means and within your boundaries. I think it's admirable is what I'm trying to get at. So I think it's really cool. So I hope that other people may see this and be like, okay, maybe there's another avenue.
Yeah, it's part of choices, right?
Pathways.
And it's easier said than done because sometimes you don't land those kind of jobs, and obviously you have to work on it just like everything else. But I think that's a solid boundary I had with myself. And honestly, even talking about it now is when I start realizing those things, that I created those things.
I'm like, you already were doing some of this
but I wasn't conscious of it until right now I'm talking about it, actually.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm like, that's a huge, like that was very intentional of you, you know?
Yeah, I made that decision, but I didn't think of it as a boundary until right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See? I'm like, people don't realize. Well, it's usually me doing that, but I'm happy you're doing that today. It's usually me. Like, I'm always looking at the videos. I'm like, when am I going like this?
I'm telling you, we're very similar.
We are very similar. Yeah. You're much more funny though. You have like good you're very witty.
You.
I am not.
I get that from my dad.
Oh really?
Oh my dad. My dad jabs. Like every single thing you tell him, he already has 2 or 3 jokes about it.
Ready.
Yeah.
No, you're pretty good.
Yeah. He has a nickname for me. Like
what is it?
Tecolotera nocturna. Because he says that, well, he has 2 nicknames. Tecolota nocturna and pata de perro.
Can you explain to the folks what these 2 things Aquí estamos en noticieros.
So Tecolota nocturna is because I had apparently a active night life.
Oh, really? Yes, no wonder you had the alcohol embryo.
I didn't.
Oh, you did it. That's what he claimed.
Didn't. I was studying. Like my dad.
Oh, your dad has this idea.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. According to my dad, I like to go out at night a lot. But yes, I socialized, and yes, I went to things, but honestly, I was not even close to being a nightlife person. Like, I'm very much a nerd. I don't know what he thought in his so many barriers by, focusing on my career and being out in LA really late at night because that's where I went to school. And so it's like he just didn't know what I was doing, but I was out.
Okay.
To him, I was just out. And to me, I'm like, Dad, you should know I'm a nerd. Like, I really am not doing anything that you should be concerned about. Not that it matters, but I'm like, I think it's funny. I just find it funny because I'm like, I wish I was a tecolotera nocturna, but I really am not. And the pata de perro is the same concept, but I can say I am because I love to travel. So that just means like somebody who likes to be traveling, like just perusing about and going on adventures. Yeah. And that I do accept.
Yeah. that you identify with
resonates.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but my dad is a funny one. I enjoy having conversations with him. Genuinely.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about your mother. Is there anything about your father when it comes to this stuff? With the boundary stuff? Yes,
my dad, I don't think had any boundaries. My dad is just himself. Yeah. Like my dad is genuinely himself. He's such a kind human, and he has a lot of unresolved childhood traumas that for sure I learned to understand as I got older. But for sure I bumped head with him a lot when I was little because I saw life through my mom's eyes. So I didn't really think I had a good relationship with my dad. Not that I had a bad one, but I don't think I had like a genuine relationship with my dad where he knew me and I knew him. I just saw his flaws through my mom's eyes. And to me, that was the truth. For the longest time. Until I started developing a relationship with my dad more intentionally and started having empathy for his experiences and understanding why he was the way he was. And I always loved his humor, and but then I understood how it was covering a lot of those traumas. And so I think growing up and having very mature conversations with him since I was like early on in high school, I feel, made us connect in a different level where I was like, oh man, like I almost wish I could have protected him, like I had those feelings initially when he told me about everything. And now as an adult, I love the relationship that we have, and I understand where he comes from, and we have a very mature and fun relationship, and watching him be a grandpa now, and just I'm excited to kind of also explore what that's gonna look like in raising my child, and raising a boy. And raising a boy not with the standards he was raised by, but raising a very free boy, a boy that is not filled with all these things. And maybe he'll have his own share of traumas, but hopefully it's not given by us. Hopefully it's not something that we ingrain in him. And I want my dad to be part of that process.
I have a lot of questions.
Yes, ask me everything.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. I think I think it's admirable that you leaned in with empathy, because it is hard to, relationships and parents, like, there's folks who it's hard to have that empathy and build on where maybe certain needs were not met, So I think that's cool that you're navigating this in a way that's like you're empathetic, and it's cool now. You're like, I would have wanted to help my dad. You mentioned that you like started to open up to him more in high school and whatnot. So was he receptive to you, like?
Yes, because again, my dad's very open, but in that openness, he's also very reactive, and that's the part I didn't like about him. Because for me, when you confront me with a conflict, I usually step back and I listen and I try to resolve it. I try to problem solve. And initially, obviously, I wasn't doing that well because I was trying to fix the person, not really like mediate the dynamic between both of us. So that's something I learned as a social worker.
I was gonna say, how did you learn that, Mike?
That was a social worker thing. It wasn't something that I just magically like.
Can I just say that would be so awesome if that was taught in schools.
Oh
like,
my God.
Imagine in high school, like teaching teenagers how to like
And they call it soft skills, but they're not soft skills. Those are like
no, they're not. Those are like life skills with any relationship, any dynamic that any people, like more than likely any job will.
Yeah, oh my
You're gonna work with people to some degree. Because like as you were saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like so many of us are like, we just want to fix the problem, but it's like we're not robots. Like we're all humans, and it's like if we understood each other, that's like
at the same level.
Yeah, that's like fundamental. Then you can. Because more than likely, that's what's causing the problem. Right. It's this that's making this.
And then that lights that fire of like, why are you trying to fix me? Like, why are you in your pedestal? Like you're sitting in your high horse and you're looking me down. And that's what my dad hated because that's where his traumas came from. Being looked down at. And so I was like, I'm doing the same thing. Like, I cannot do that to him. And so... I think eventually with time, initially those were our conversations of me looking down at him and like trying to fix him because, I knew of all, the stuff that they had going on. And asterisk, my mom and dad love each other. This is just like normal, like trying to adjust to marriage stuff. They love each other. Yeah. And so, but yeah, like I think that also helped me see later on as a social worker, how to talk to him differently. And I think that more mature phase of our relationship came later where then I also had to listen to what he had to say about me and also like listen to the things that he felt about my mom too, right? And see my mom in a different way, in a different light, in a mature way, right? In a way where it changes my feelings towards her. But I think it challenged me to explore them both as individual human beings.
Is everyone taking notes? Like, this is the most beautiful, healthy thing ever.
Oh, again, it's not perfect. I'm just saying, like,
no, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm saying it's healthy.
Thank you.
I think it's like that, and to me, where my head goes is love. Like, that's where my head goes. Is like it goes to love. Like, you do this because
I love both of them.
You love them, and then the love just deepens. Yeah, and isn't that what to feel that deep love and connection with people? Like, I don't know, like. Because as you were talking about, I'm like, wow, like, I'm going to take you up on that offer because I feel like part of it is the listening part on the other end. Like, like listening to your parents and even in like in marriage and in relationships, like you have to, in friendships, like true trust is like being like, okay, tell me exactly how you feel. And don't tell me this because, so that I can get mad at you or so I can like rebuttal and have a debate. No, like, let me know how you feel so that I can understand you. Yeah. And that you're saying this not because you want to hurt me, but so that I can understand you better. And I think a lot of us are afraid of that because, but it's like, but if you trust that person, that where it's coming from is like from a place of like love. Yeah. True, like love, like understand me. And what I'm saying is like, this is just how I feel and this is how it makes me feel. Yeah. And
that's a boundary.
And that is. Elaborate.
Yeah, because I think, again, it goes back to my initial comment of like having those boundaries of understanding like this is the best way that you're going to be able to love that other person of like creating this dynamic. And because when you're creating boundaries, you're creating dynamics. Like it's not necessarily like you're literally drawing a line. You're not like physically putting like, this is a boundary between me and you.
Well, like you can't eat this concha. Like this is a boundary
you're
though.
Not
like
really,
this is like, you can't really eat this.
Whatever. I'll still eat it. But... This is a post-podcast conversation. But for me, and I'm a very visual person, when I notice, like when I think about a boundary that I'm trying to create, I literally, it's more about doing this. Like removing, like whatever it is that you have a preconceived notion or an idea or an existing experience with the person, right? That can just like claw at you forever because like for me, I can think about all the things that were exchanged between me and my dad and just be like, I'm not open to that because he told me this and he like made me feel bad because of this. But no, like I'm choosing because I love him to try to get to know him better and to try to have, doesn't mean I'm gonna agree. Like it doesn't mean, like in any way, shape or form, doesn't mean we're gonna end up having the same ideas or being perfectly fine with each other's ideas, but it just means we create more openness between us and take away any of those pre-existing dynamics that we had and create a new one. So that's the way that I see this being a boundary, because I think for me it's more about the dynamic that you have.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm gonna quote Salma Hayek right now, but I'm gonna.
Who doesn't love Salma? Like, she's great.
This whole, what you're talking about, dynamics and stuff, and love and empathy, it reminds me of I saw her say that with her and her marriage. She's like, she's like, we when we get upset or we have frustrations, we never go, oh, it was your fault. Like it's never about whose fault it is. It's like, okay, how do we fix this?
Yeah.
And I was like, boo. And she's like, if only our governments. I was like, yeah.
Post-podcast conversation.
Post-podcast conversation, yeah. But I was just like, oh my God, like that what she's saying there reminds me a lot about what you're talking about here. And, oh my God, hang on. Is there like a little bug right there?
Oh no, that's a boundary the bug is not trying to have with the bun.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what the fuck.
It's okay. They're like little bugs that they come out of nowhere.
I'm sorry.
They're magical bugs.
Magical bugs. Sorry.
Let me move this.
There was like a little bug. I don't know if it's from the flowers. Anyways, sorry.
They're listening to your podcast.
Yeah, they are. They're like, what are you talking about, Salma Hayek? Anyway, so what am I saying? Where am I going with this? Okay. Salma has boundaries with her husband. But I love it because it's like all about like a common goal, you know, like working towards something together. And relationships are that way too. It's like ultimately like you and your father, like at the end of the day, it's like you just want to like appreciate each other and love each other, and you know, like. Right. But so actually I want to take a little step back because yes, I may be jumping ahead here because I also want to be devil's advocate. I'm always trying to be like, okay, what do you think about this? Because there's the people who are coming from different angles. Right. So say there's somebody who's like, no, it's like, it's just too hard. It's just, it hurt. There's just too much damage that's done, or I want them to be this certain way and it's just not going to happen. Like when you hear these sort of responses that I'm making up right now, but like what comes to mind?
There's a lot there. There's like a lot, and it also may not be the time. And that's okay. Like for me, the things I'm exploring with my therapist now, it wasn't the time maybe before when I theoretically wanted to look for a therapist. Right. And so I think it's also like if you're not comfortable and you're putting yourself in a very susceptible situation where you feel like maybe one, it's not your priority, right? Because it could be more of a non-emotionally attached thing of like, I just don't want to, that's not my priority right now. Yeah. Personal choice. Yeah. But it's also like, if you're emotionally not ready to explore that, that's okay too. Like you don't want to like also break yourself. Like it's more of a healing thing. Like if you're ready and you want to do that, I think that's great. But if you're also not ready, like no one can force you to like have a conversation. Right. When did you feel like you were ready for all of this? I think, I guess it depends on who we're talking about, because like I'm still working on a couple ones, right? But like I think with my dad, for me it was probably post high school when I felt like I didn't really know him that well. Like I knew of his stories and things that he would tell me, like very superficial stuff. But I feel like he didn't know what I was gonna do. Like if you asked him like where I was going to school or what I was doing in my career, he didn't know. Like and things like that. I'm like, how could he not know? Like I was like, we live in the same house. Like how could he not know what I'm doing, right? Yeah. And I was like, no, like I need to step up and I need to like get to know who he is, because I love him and he matters in my life and I need to do this. And so obviously it's still a work in progress because I'm still getting to know him in different levels, but I think I can think of that being the timeline for my dad specifically, of like realizing that we didn't know each other in certain ways. I think that's really beautiful. And it's funny, I was going to ask you like why, but you just answered it. Yeah. It's like, because I love him and you want to be close to him. And for the most part I hear like how to better oneself or whatever, but I'm feeling a lot of good vibes and inspiration, motivation of how to apply this to, because we always think boundaries are these things that like, oh, you have to, it makes you stay away from people. But what I'm learning from you is like boundaries could also be a way to actually get close to people. Yeah. Which I'm just like, oh. That's literally what it is. Yeah. If there's one thing to take away today. What is the takeaway? Yeah, that visual thing I did with the little plate thing. Oh yeah. I was like, we opened doors. I saw that. I think that's what That's what I feel. And I felt the same way initially about boundaries. I was like, oh no, I have to draw. And that's what I meant by the Google Calendar thing that I said.
An event. It has to be
it's like an event. It's a thing. It's a thing that I draw out. But that's so hard. Like, that's so hard to conceptualize. So me just changing in doing that, right? Like, I have to create something, or
it makes me think of extreme,
right?
Like,
but you don't have to.
It doesn't have to be.
No, you're just slowly opening.
I think that's
it's harder to do than, I think it's a work in progress of like just starting from a place where you want to start, and then continuing to practice.
Yeah, but I it's funny because my mind actually went, because you're being practical right now. You're like, yes, it is hard. I don't know why my mind went to like, and maybe it's because of the state in which I'm in right now and how I'm receiving this information. Everyone will receive it differently. But right now, I'm just like, for me, it's like, oh, it's a beautiful thing. Like, just, it's a nice thing. It's a beautiful thing. I am going to say something. I always try to figure out how I'm going to say it because it's like I'm speeding in my head, but then it comes out and I have to like make sure it makes sense when it comes out of my mouth. But like, I do think that if anybody who's watching and it's like trying to figure out what the next step is, I think one thing that I can pretty much guarantee is that like if you surround yourself with even one person where you feel like you respect them and you feel like they're honoring themselves and they have their boundaries and they're like, and they're emitting that sort of energy, like be around them, like pick their brain, like lean in, I think that's, I don't know. It's like, that's why there's community, like ask and talk and learn. And I don't know. I think it's like, I don't know. I think that's,
I would say also you can get feedback, right? Because like I do that with my husband. I'm like, did I say this right? Like, because I mean, obviously I feel like my husband knows me the best because obviously we live together. Yeah. And so he sees all of my quirks. And so sometimes like I overthink a lot of things.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't seem like somebody, isn't that funny? I see you and I'm like, I think you're so like, chill. And
I work on that.
Wow. Okay,
yeah. Okay. That's something that I put more pressure internally on myself than I do with others. And so I think that's something you don't see. That's something that through my social work training and through life and through experience, like I've just learned to kind of do. But with my husband, I do ask him for feedback and he'll like help me out sometimes and be like, oh yeah, maybe try this or try that. And I do the same with him. And when he wants to
both
do,
ways. That's cool.
So sometimes like if you're comfortable, right? Like if you have somebody that can help you, like, or even if they're in the conversation, be like, hey, this is what happened. Like, what do you think? Yeah. Like, should I try something different next time?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I definitely, Anna already knows I asked for feedback. But one thing that, and I'm curious to think to see what you think about this, but one thing that Anna always tells me, she's like, you need to, and I'm working on it, so trust me, I feel like I've made great strides in the last year and a half with this, but to be more confident in trusting myself in my decisions, like decision making. And if I say something or I did something, like just own it. Like, that's something I think that's the biggest thing that I am currently working through. And I do think that part of that relates to boundaries and like knowing that, like, I don't know, like for example, for me, you said earlier, like reactive, like I think in my 20s, I was very reactive to things. Had I taken the time to like just be more centered and like building that, because Anna's like, because I always look at Anna, I'm like, you seem like, she's like, I did the work. Like, she's like, it's because I feel like, she's like, I feel like I did put a little bit more of that work of like when there were moments where I was reactive to be like, wait, what's going on? Like, and building that relationship with oneself to be like, okay, next time it happens. And I think now I'm doing that. I don't know where I'm going with this tangent, so
no, I hear you.
I don't know.
I was gonna say yes, but I guess, and also
I'm like
keeping in mind that you and Anna had different experiences, and you and Anna have different timelines.
We have very different experiences.
Very different experiences, which puts you in a different timeline. So
I feel like I'm in a movie. We'll put you in a different time, a different dimension.
You were in the Matrix. You were caught in the Matrix, and she was already living in it.
To be honest, like you're totally right. Like, and I'm very transparent about like the fact that Anna and I grew up very differently. Although we both came from immigrant families, very different though.
Right.
Whereas my dad did know the language and her parents didn't.
Right.
My parents knew English, and so there was this huge barrier, and where she had to make decisions at a younger age.
Right.
Whereas my dad was the opposite. He was like a controller. Like he controlled everything. He didn't let us make decisions because he was like, I'm gonna make sure, and it was like too much.
Right.
Where it's like left her where she had to like, she gained that confidence, and for me it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
So here we are.
But you're working on it.
But I am working on it.
And it's something that you want to do in your time, right? And that helps in your dynamic with each other, but also internally, right? Like these are things that, so I don't think there's like any right way to do it or any right time. I think it's just depending on your circumstances and where you are at.
Thank you. Wow, you're a therapist.
Yeah.
That makes me feel so much, I know, I'm like, that makes me feel so much better. Like, cause sure, there's like frustration, right? And like, I'm like, I am working on it, but I have and I've talked about this app. It's free. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy app that I use, and I write in it because to me, are you familiar with it?
Yeah, you shared
Did
it.
I share with you? I was like, I feel like I've told everybody.
It was you.
I'm an ambassador.
It was all you.
Have you used it at all yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, that's okay. I should get sponsored. No, because
feelings.
No, it's okay. I started using it. Well, no big deal.
I did tell you I wanted to do it.
You did. You did tell me, and you remember it now.
Yeah.
So
I have it on my phone. I just need to do it.
I started using it last January of 2022 because somebody told me about it.
Yeah.
And I did use it. No, I started using it because I was like, I was dealing through stuff, and it's funny now to look back at that time in my life to see like my emotions change over time. But for me, that's become like an outlet to. It's almost like it forces me to take time to reflect and talk with myself and talk about my emotions and what does this mean. For me, I think building that confidence is building that relationship within myself. Is that silly?
No, it's not silly. I just like I visualize walking in and just seeing you talk to yourself when you said that, and I thought it was funny.
I actually do talk to myself quite often.
I think it's normal.
I was talking to myself since I was a kid.
I have myself up.
Hell yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
I do a little dance.
Yeah, just
the whole thing.
But no, I think that's great. Like that in the way that you function, right? Like you function by like maybe checking off things or like keeping yourself to a certain standard. And I feel very similarly to you. I think that's why I brought up Google Calendar multiple times.
I have Google Calendars.
I think Google Calendar should sponsor us now. But
I literally have like calendar like events for everything, even like when I'm driving somewhere, because that's time. I don't have time.
I shared a Google Calendar with my husband when dating. When we're dating,
and
we're crazy people. Like we really.
He liked it. He was the.
But it was great because we were both in school, so like we had to do a shared Google Calendar to make sure we knew like not to like micro manage each other, but just be like, okay, like they have an hour to spare, like we can go get coffee.
I love that.
That's the only way.
We have one now where it's like we were inviting each other to stuff, but now that we're married, we have the shared where it's like Dia's got to see a family calendar.
No, we barely were getting to know each other. We had.
Damn.
Weird.
No, you know what?
That
it was meant to be. No, it was meant to be.
Yeah, we were. Like he accepted the Google Calendar part.
When you keep on saying you're like, oh, something's not perfect, I was like, no, nothing's perfect. I just love it's healthy. It's like that's.
I am a perfectionist.
Oh, is that why you keep on saying it's not perfect? Why is perfect?
I was just talking about it yesterday. Yeah, because I keep tangent, small tangent.
Is it post podcast chat? Just kidding.
Post podcast. No, it's actually having to do with my healing process of letting go of and accepting losing my child, right, my first child. And so I've been wanting to write a letter to him, and that's something that I know my mom did when my older sister passed, and then also she had 2 miscarriages. And so I learned a lot from my mom. So therapist was like, well, what's stopping you? And I was like, I don't want to cry. And she's like, well, what's the, and I'm summarizing this, right? It was a long conversation, but she's like, well, why don't you want to cry? And I was like, I don't have time.
What? That's what you said?
I seriously said, I was like, I don't have time. I'm like, I have to be responsible responsive to my child. I have to be responsive to things, and I can't just sit there and like cry and write a letter. Like, and she's like, why not? She's like, why not? And I'm like, I don't know.
Whoa.
And then
what did your therapist say?
In the whole conversation, it got to a point where then I told her, I was like, I keep writing this letter in my head, and I say different things every time, and I feel like I can't write it. Like, I feel like there's not enough things, or like the words that I have in my language are not sufficient or not adequate to describe my love or like my loss for him. And she's like, do you think it's like because you want to write a perfect letter? And I was like, yeah. So it's not the part that I didn't want to cry. And I thought that was that mentally, that's what I thought. But then afterwards I was like, no, I think she hit the nail on the head of like, I think I just want to write a perfect letter.
Why do you want to write a perfect letter?
Because he's a perfect human. Like, to me, I'm like, I want
what does perfect mean to you?
I think
that's
I don't know. I don't know.
What does it mean to be perfect to you? Or maybe next therapy session. Stop.
No, I think it's more about these unwritten expectations I place on myself. It's not necessarily that I expect people to be perfect.
Yeah.
I don't even expect that from people. It's just myself. It's more like, for me, this was something very specific in my life and very special, and you know, the first of so many things, right? Like, this child was my first one, the first one that made me excited and all this stuff. And so, like, there's so many layers to that, right? And so, and I'm just like summarizing all of this, but it's more, how do I put that in words? And my perfectionism comes in and it's like, well, if I'm not gonna do it right, like, why am I gonna do it kind of thing? Yeah. I'm like waiting for like the perfect moment to do it, the perfect words, like the perfect modality, and that's not gonna happen. So I just have to do it.
I have so many things to say, but I don't want to. Maybe your therapist will fill you in. But a lot. I don't know. Do you want to hear what
Sure. Yeah.
It's interesting because I mean, this letter, you can write as many letters as you want.
Exactly. And that's like something I didn't think about.
Like, oh man, like, I don't even want to go down this because it's emotional. Okay. It's emotional. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. Yeah. You're in good hands with your therapist, and you will have the, I think there's a level of vulnerability too with the letter writing. Yeah. You know, there's a level of like you really being vulnerable with yourself about what you've experienced and the love you have for your child. Like there's a level of vulnerability, and it can be scary, and it can be daunting, and it could be, there's sadness because you said there's loss, but the truth, I always say it, the truth will set you free. Like it will be, but it's in your own time. Like you said, like we brought up these different things. It's like, it's all a process, it's all your own time. And, but I think, I don't know, it makes my heart warm that, oh my God, I'm going to get emotional, and I don't even know your kid, but like you love your kid, man. I'm getting emotional. I'm like,
ya me voy.
No, like, I think it's such a, like, people underestimate, like, you have like such a big heart, dude. Aww. You know what I mean? Like,
thank you.
And it's like, so wherever your son is, it was your son? Yeah. Wherever he is, like, dude, like, he has you as his mom, man. Like, that's.
And I think that's the hardest part to kind of process, right? Like that accept the loss, and that's the part where I've been working the most at, of like just making sure that like I fully accept, not just verbally, but like accept that this is somebody that, of course, I want to keep alive in my life, and I don't want to just kind of, you know, leave him in that memory, but like, how do I do that without it hurting so much? Because it's still so fresh. And so for me, that's like the thing that I've been more like focusing on. But it's a work in progress for sure. But I appreciate your words. It's so nice to hear that. But I think it's helping me even just heal those parts too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because in a way, I feel like his existence honors his brothers.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so when I see him, I think about my child too.
Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry. Stop. I'm like, oh my God.
Because it's like that love that you have. And
beautiful.
I love that I can give that love. And in that way, I'm still honoring my other child's existence in my life because he still existed and he still was. And those memories still are. And I don't have to delete them. It's the easiest thing to do because you don't want to cope. But I think it's much, much better to just honor and to just have him around me. Yeah.
Wow. You're so wise, Lisette. And she's just
I'm a
30.
60-year-old
She's a
woman.
baby.
I'm not a fetus anymore.
I'm just like continuously amazed by people who are younger than me. Like, I don't know why. I'm just like, wow.
You should just say that I'm older than you. Like, just like make yourself feel younger. Be like,
yeah, okay, let's try it.
And so
yeah, you're so old. Well, if you give me the permission to say so, you're so old and wise. I'm just like little 28-year-old. Just like, don't know. You're like 30.
Thank you. I've just grown up, and I'm just so much wiser now. I don't know anything.
Wow. Like my cousin's daughter was like, she's like, would do this. I guess it's a thing. Like,
oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It's short.
What?
Kristen Wiig in SNL, she does this skit where she's shy.
Oh, yes, I think.
She's just like, she's like, I'm shy. She's like, and so that's what I always think about when I do it. I'm like, I'm shy. Like, don't ask me anything, but I'm shy.
But you're not. It's so funny you say you're an introvert, but I don't think so.
I'm very, very shy.
I don't see it. Do you see a shy girl here?
Yes.
I see a wise, loving mother who I've been inspired and motivated in this conversation with you. I'm sure y'all will be too. You give some hope. It's all rooted in love. So that's so.
Yeah, and that's all I want people to hear, right? Like I think all of us are working on our own stuff, and the point is we're working on it, right? Like that we're actively like doing something, and
that's all we could do with that.
I just want to like I said, be the best version, not be perfect, be the best version to myself, and be kind to myself, and be in the same way to others, and hopefully that sparks, like you said, inspiration and love and support for each other. I'm just remembering a couple of sentences ago when we were talking about like selecting friends and people around you. I'm glad I have this space to share with you, because I've noticed that I'm feeling more and more comfortable with the people around me, and I think that's what makes me not shy. It's not that I'm not shy, it's just that I feel very uncomfortable having awkward conversations with people I don't connect with. And I think as a kid, you remember those dynamics when you're forced to saludar a personas que you don't want to saludar, or like hug like icky people, and you're like what? Like, not that deal, like not that person, like. But then you get to make choices later on, right? And some of us stay stuck in those dynamics for a while, of feeling forced to like have those forced connections. But I think as you get older, you have more freedom to choose, which is great. And it's very liberating to find yourself with circles of people you're more comfortable with.
100%.
Hashtag boundaries.
Hashtag boundaries. And I always say this on these coffee chats, because like a lot of the people that I brought on are people that I don't know, that I'm in the process of getting to know. But like everybody, just like the energy, like I am really grateful that because I'm doing this work on myself, that I'm allowing myself to be open to new people. And like I said to you yesterday, like you're awesome. Like you bring such light, and like it's so comfortable talking to you.
Thank you.
Since the day I met you, I was like, oh my God, didn't we like?
I think we've met.
Well, we met. We've met before, right?
In another
dimension.
In the Matrix.
Oh yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, I
you
remember
and
that.
Hannah?
Yeah.
You're coming out of this icky stuff, like.
Oh, girl, here.
Also, I saw The Matrix when I was an adult, so like it's very fresh in my mind.
I did too, actually.
Yeah, I had never seen The Matrix. I thought that was like a white people movie. It genuinely didn't
interest you. Yeah.
No, I watched like Sábado Gigante, which again is problematic, but that's another.
Yeah, that's part 2 of this conversation.
And the novelas.
Las novelas.
Probably not appropriate for my age, but that's fine.
Anyone's age, I know. But yeah, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Pleasure having you here for cafecito and conchas,
which I drank.
Which she drank all of it in her Selena cup.
Ta-da!
We were gonna have an audience member today, but unfortunately they could not attend. But
post podcast conversation.
But
you know who you are.
But no, we can shout out. Can we shout out to her? You think it's fine? Okay. Right?
I don't know. Yeah, sure.
Maybe not. Well, shout out to the person who connected us. They know who they are.
You know what you did.
Yeah, you know what you did. But thank you for introducing us. I think this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she was like, oh, I know a perfect person for the coffee chat.
Yeah. Yeah, she would have been proud.
She would have been so proud.
I'm probably going to see her today.
Okay, tell her. You're like,
I'll let her know. Well, thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
I think we can have so many more of these conversations.
I think so too. Well, as maybe next year with the motherhood thing, maybe we can bring you back and we could talk about mom
Bring
stuff.
Jordy.
Yeah. He'll be our audience.
Scan QR code to donate to the college fund. Hey, you know what? I take what I get.
Oh, I like that.
Scan QR code. Donate to my child's college fund because I'm still not rich.
I love it.
Because I chose to be a social worker.
I was like, well.
I chose to help people.
Oh, well, on that note.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Pinky up.
Oh, pinky up, sorry. You know what? Why did I do that? Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you. I have no coffee left, so
so you're just like.
Pretend. Ta-da. Thank you for my concha back.
You're welcome.
I really feel comforted.
Isn't it cute?
Yeah.